Hello friends, I am Sanket. Our today's topic is Webview applications. So now first of the how to use Webview, how to implement, how to design in your iOS applications. So now let's try to create a new projects in practical basis. So now here I am creating one single view application. Now write down your application name. So now here my application name is Webview. I am creating one new projects. So now Webview is an object that display interactive web contents such as for your application browser. So now here you can use a web view as per your requirement content. So now here let's try to design your main.storyboard. So now again, before we implementing, let's try to change our background color. So now here I am changing my background color. Now just go to your control library. Now just search web view. So now here you can see there are the two controls are there. First it's a web view, but here you can see in braces it's a deprecated. Okay, now second one is WebKit view. So now according to your iOS and Swift version, some controls are the deprecated. So now here I am using a WebKit view. So now actually WebView and WebKit view are both are same, but according to your iOS and Xcode version you have to use a control according to me. Now so now this is the WebKit. So now you have to change your WebView height, width according to your requirement whenever your content is loaded. Okay, so now here for example this is my WebView. So now here I am implementing in a full screen. So now this is the web view. Now you can use a web view using WK web view class. So now whenever you use the web view, so now you have to use some default class. It's called WK. WK it means WebKit. It's a web view class. So now let's try to see some important property of the web view. So now here just select your web view. So now here you can see. So now our most important property is this media interaction data detectors. Okay, now according to your content, okay, now your web view has been orange. Okay, for example you have to load some PDF file. So now at the time your web view is orange with kind of PDF viewer. Now if you want to load any YouTube links or any video links, at that time you have your web view has been orange and media player format. So now you can use this property as per your requirement. For example our important properties data detector. So now whenever you load any content like the PDF docs, so now in between you can see the phone number, link and address, calendar event, tracking number, flight number, lookup suggestions. Okay, so now at that time you can use according to your requirement. So now let's try to implement first. So now first I have to create one outlet of our web view. So now here I am creating one objects as outlet. So now my web view. So now here you can see your web view is containing a WK web view class. So now this is the base class for the implementation your web view. So now here you can see one error also. So now you can see the use of undeclared type WK web view. So now whenever you use a web view, so now according to containing means your content load on our web view, we have to require the web view framework. So now how to use it? So now first go to your main project folders, means root directory, and now here you can see the option build phases. So now just click on build phases. Now in between you can see there are the different options. So now in you have to select third option, it's a link binary with library, and now just click on add button. So now you can see these are the frameworks and library window you have to use as per your requirement. So now here we have required it's a WebKit. Okay, so now whenever you use a web view, at that time this framework is required to load your content. So now here first I am using it's a WebKit framework. Now click on add. Now then before we implementing, import your framework. So now using import WebKit. Okay, at that time you can see your WK WebView class, it's from the WebKit framework. Okay, so now here how to load a content on your WebView. So now here, for example, I am using a different links. So for example, this is the PDF link, this is the Facebook link, this is the YouTube link. Okay, so now as per your requirement, you have to use any content on your WebView. So now here I am implementing my WebView using view did load method. Means whenever you load your application, at that time your WebView will be loaded with your as per content requirement. So now here let's try to create first object as a URL. So now here I am using one objects. So now which content you load. Okay, so now here I am using as a URL class. So now in URL we have one method as a string. So now first I am loaded one PDF file. So now this is the link for this PDF. So now here my URL is ready. Now then after, okay, whenever you load any content using URL, it should be required as a URL request class. So now let's create one another class using URL request objects. So now here we have one class, it's a URL request, and now using this class you have to use this method, it's a URL. So now URL, it means this URL. So now here you have to pass your URL objects, it means it's a my URL. Okay, now then after you have to load this content on your WebView. So now here I am creating one objects of my WebView. So now here you have to use my WebView dot load method. So now here you have to load your content using load method. So now here you have to pass your URL request object, it means URL req. So now simply you have to pass, simply it's a URL req. Now it's a simple 3-line code. You have to design a WebView according to your content. Okay, so now let's try to run your application and see the output. So now here I am creating one WebView and the loaded one PDF file on the WebView. Now let's try to check our WebView. So now your WebView is containing one online PDF. So now this is the link. So now let's try to check the output. Your application is on the way. Now hold it. Okay, because your actually contents are loaded on internet basis, so now it's a time taking process. So now just hold it. Okay, now here I'm loaded one PDF file. So now you can see. Okay, now yeah, see your PDF file has been loaded. So now you can see there are the total 22 pages are there in this PDF. Okay, so now here I am loaded one PDF file. So now your WebView is arranged as a PDF reader format. Okay, now you have to use as a zoom in zoom out functionality also. So now as per your requirement you have to load any content on our WebView controller. Okay, now let's try to change a link. For example, I have to load Facebook. So now let's see the output. So now here I am changing my URL PDF to Facebook. Okay, now check the application, run your application and see the output. So now here I am loaded Facebook website on our WebView. So now here you can see your Facebook. Yeah, okay, so now you can see your Facebook has been loaded on your WebView. Okay, now here you have to also see, for example, it's I'm using YouTube. Okay, so now here I'm changing the link Facebook to YouTube. Now again let's run your application and check the output. So now whenever you load any content on your WebView, according to your content your WebView will be orange. Okay, for example, here I'm using YouTube. So now whenever you select any video, means you have to play any video, for example like that. So now your application view, means your web view is loaded some player media. Okay, so now you can see, okay, your web view arrange as a media player option. So now you can see, you can use as per your requirement. Okay, so now here I'm loaded a web view. Okay, so now this is the web view. For the web view we have to use a wk web view class. Now this class is from the WebKit framework. Okay, now web view, it's again most important controls for the application development. So now you have to implement simply a 2 to 3 line code, and you have to also use or implement as per your requirement. So now this is the web view. Thank you.